it is my sincere pleasure to introduce our Doctorate of Education at Ontario Tech University. And I will be at the end of the webinar, the information webinar, the presentation part, I'll post a link to this presentation so you have information and links. And one of the links that you really want to take a look at closely is our web page, which we will be updating with some videos, but we wanted to get some preliminary information out there. So this is the direct link to our web page, but once you get this presentation, you can just link to it. So today, I've got a relatively big agenda, but I will try to express each area fairly concisely so that I don't go on, and I'm sure you have lots of questions. So I'll give you a little bit about background of what we were thinking when we were designing this program, and then a quick overview of the program, why you might consider Ontario Tech University. A number of you have already been on our master's program, but you may not have been. So I want to talk a bit about what Ontario Tech has to offer. I'll go over the program map, which is important for you to understand, the core courses and the elective courses, areas of focus that you should take a look at, and then the research labs that we have that you may want to be involved in. Finding a supervisor, that's pretty critical, and then the application process. So when we designed this program, it's been going on for a little while, and I think almost 3 years in terms of trying to get it right. We have a focus on technology in a sort of very broad sense. It's the areas education and digital age. We're Ontario Tech, so that's part of our program, but it could be tangential as well, depending on your interests. It's multidisciplinary, so we have a number of faculties involved in the program, and so we think that'll be a benefit to our students with science and engineering and health and business. So there's a number of areas, faculty members who also could be co-supervisors. We wanted to design the program to accommodate busy professionals. You can take the program full-time, of course, but we designed it with busy professionals in mind. And probably one of the most important parts of our design is a scaffolded approach to doing your thesis. And I'll talk about that in detail, but we designed the program in such a way that it would be much easier for you to complete a thesis, because that is actually the challenging part when you're doing a doctorate. So a brief overview, our overall theme is education in a digital age. It's pretty broad. So there's a number of areas that can be, that you could be associated with the program. As I said, it was cross-disciplinary, small cohorts. So we accept usually a maximum of 15 students per year. We may in our first year change that to 20 students or somewhere around there, because we do expect there's a backlog of applications. It is designed for you to be able to finish it in 3 years. That doesn't mean you'd have to finish it in 3 years. You'd have to be pretty focused, but it can be done for sure. And there are multiple areas of focus that we're trying to accommodate folks in terms of their interest, because if you're doing a thesis, you want to do something that you are interested in, because that will drive you, something that not only that you're interested in, that you're passionate about. So why would you come to Ontario Tech? Well, if you've been to our master's program, you'll understand some of the reasoning, but we have a pretty tried and true tested online learning model that we use for our classes. Highly interactive, no lectures. There is a strong synchronous component each week to keep people together, to build collaboration and social presence. And that's resulted in number 5 there, the past success of about a 97% graduation rate. The thesis is scaffolded in terms of the design, and I'll go over that in just a moment. And it's in cohorts. So you get a lot of support while you're doing your thesis. And that's something that is unique to Ontario Tech. The 3-year design, I don't think is unique. I think many programs probably present that as an option. But I think it's actually quite doable in our program. It just depends on your schedule and your focus, of course, and your supervisor and a lot of things. And of course, we know meaningful technology, it's not just lip service. So those are some of the strengths of Ontario Tech. In terms of the program map, and this is important, so here's the 3-year breakdown. So you have the introduction, which is really for you to delve deeply in the research and your proposed research area with your supervisor to dig in and to come up with a topic, a focus, a research question. So there's a whole course devoted to that. While you're doing that course, and that's where this box is down here with each thesis step. So that's a thesis step. You have your supervisor to guide you. You have the course itself supporting you and the instructor. And then you have your peers giving you feedback. We think this is really an ideal model to help you grow. Often you do a thesis in isolation. If some of you have done a master's thesis, you know that you have your supervisor, but you don't generally have a group of people to talk with and to give feedback on. And then you work on your methodology. Once you have your research questions, you try to determine the best methodology, and you have a whole course on that. So that's to focus on what are the kinds of methods that you wanted to do. And so you can investigate in detail the kind of method and maybe actually expose yourself to different methodologies. So it's quite personalized. During that first year, you could complete 3 electives. So you could have do the introduction elective in the first term, the methodology and elective in the second term, and the third term you could do an elective, or you could do all 3 electives in your third term. You could also do these electives in year 2. So you have some flexibility depending on your time pressures and the kinds of things that are going on in your life. So once you have your introduction, your methodology sort of set, you then work on your thesis proposal for a whole course, again, with the support of your supervisor, the course structure, an instructor, and your peers. And you develop a thesis proposal, and then you'd have your candidacy exam where you would defend that proposal and what you what you've decided to do for your thesis. So that would be year 2. In year 3, and probably during year 2, you would be starting to collect data, or you could be starting to collect data. You have a complete course on data analysis, and so that could be actually while you're analyzing your data or in the process of collecting and analyzing it, but developing the methodologies for which you want to analyze your data. Again, that's an entire course, so it's very specialized. And then you work to, once you have your data now analyzed, you work to thesis writing. And that, again, it's a whole course on writing your thesis, getting feedback from your supervisor and your instructor and your peers over a 12-week time period. So we think that that's a pretty good way to write a thesis and keep you motivated. And then you would defend after the 3rd year, ideally, if that's and of course, if it didn't work out that way, you could have another. You would go to year 4 and maybe be doing some more thesis writing or data analysis. It depends on again on your individual situation. And I've been in the master's program long enough to know there's a lot of variability there. So core courses, and I'll talk about, well, I've just gone over the core courses. There would be roughly 15 students per class, so small classes. 2 to 3 hours in a virtual class. Again, that sort of 6 to 9 time slot. It's probably going to be more hours outside of class, depending on the particular course. So when you're first starting, you're going to probably have to do a fair bit of reading to try to get into the area that you're interested in and the theory behind it. And so a little bit more than you might be used to in the master's, or maybe a lot more. I think many of you are aware, not all of you. It's highly interactive. There's small group discussions. You'll be consulting with your supervisor. You start with your supervisor, and we'll talk a bit about that in a few more slides. And you'll be getting peer feedback. Again, I'm going to give you these slides so that you can find the core courses and the actual descriptions. The electives, I mentioned that there were 3. There are typical classes, and you'd be enmeshed with master's students, 20 to 30 students per class, same sort of structure of the 2 to 3 hours per class. I mean, it could be 1.5 hours as well. And roughly 6 hours outside of class. Not necessarily reading. There could be all kinds of activities that you could do. Again, highly interactive. We offer choices in your assignments, and we want to obviously direct the elective to be as useful to you as possible. There's also actually a doctoral internship course. So depending on where you are, you might have an internship and work with an instructor to develop, I guess, a plan about how you would reflect on what was going on in your internship and how that could actually serve your goals in terms of the thesis. And there are links to the electives there. We have a number of research labs right now, and it's growing. But right now we have the Collaboratory for Policy and Leadership. Shouldn't have an S there. Educational Informatics Lab, the Ideas Lab, Mental Health and a Digital Age Lab, the Physical Education and Digital Culture Lab, and the STEAM 3D Maker Lab. And if you click on this link, you'll get to our labs or just the main doctorate education webpage. In terms of research areas, you're not restricted to these, but these are well defined in the actual on our webpage. So educational technology is probably not surprising. E-learning or online learning, equity, diversity, inclusion, health and education, language literacy, leadership and policy, online learning, STEAM, which is science, technology, not so much engineering, but arts and mathematics, and teacher education. And we're coming into home stretch here. Now, to apply, you will need a supervisor. So you'll have to identify a supervisor. So this is how I would do it. I would go to the research areas, and I'll just click on that link, and that'll pull me out of the presentation. And so you will take a look at these research areas, and then we're at now on our Doctorate of Education webpage. And so you can see all the things that I've talked about actually in the presentation so far. So say you're interested in educational technology, you can click on that. You take a look at some of the key areas of focus and the labs, and then some grants may be associated. And then what you want to do is take advantage of these links. So perhaps you want to work with Dr. Bill Hunter. So you're going to click on that, and that's his web page. And his bio, he actually has his own personal web page and some publications, so you can get some information. You'll have to do some digging for matching a supervisor. Maybe you have one already in mind. You could also just click on research profiles here and then see all our education professors. We also have professors outside of the faculty, but we're starting inside of the faculty right now. So what you would do then is contact the faculty member via email. And if it were me, I would provide some sort of overview of what I want to do. I'd probably add a CV. And again, maybe you know your supervisor, so that might be also, it might not be as necessary to be that formal, but you'd want to see if there's some interest with that faculty member, whether they can take you on. And then if it were me, I would set up a meeting with the potential supervisor. That could be one route to try to just make sure that you're on the same page in terms of what you are thinking of maybe doing. I mean, you don't have to know exactly your topic or anything, but you want to make sure that there's a good symbiotic relationship there. And then secure agreement. That sounds rather informal, but it would just be that the supervisor would be willing to supervise you. So what are we looking for? Well, you presumably have some sort of solid writing skills, some previous research experience, maybe you've done a thesis or publication or conference presentations or that kind of thing, but you understand research because this is a fairly significant deal, having a doctorate, so you want to make sure that you understand what you're getting into. You want to be able to work independently, and that's important. That you obviously you're working with a supervisor and a course instructor and your peers, but it is your thesis, so you want to make sure that you can do that independently. I would say you'd be a good problem solver, so that you work with your supervisor, but you have some ideas about how you might want to do things. And strong organizational skills are really helpful. Your willingness to read extensively is important. With the doctorate, you do have to read a fair bit and know the literature. I guess you wouldn't be here if you didn't have a growth mindset. If you're at this stage, you clearly love to learn and you want to learn more. But and I don't know if it's most important, but you're the kind of person that gets things done. You're rather efficient at doing these things. That would be, and that's, we don't have a criteria list. I'm just saying these would be probably pretty good set of skills to have. You're doing your application, so it's important. Cost of program, may have a whole bunch of people signing up at this moment. I don't know, but this is fairly typical actually. We've priced our doctorate pretty similar to anything across the country. So it's estimated at about $10,500 per year. And that's a flat fee. So that's how doctorates work. There is limited funding available. There's some, it depends on your thesis supervisor and whether they have money as well. And there's OSAP and things like that as well. But it's limited at this stage. And ideally, but not necessarily, you would have completed a thesis or a project. You may have just done a straight course only master's, but then you would have to demonstrate that you have some other areas that other main research type publications, so that we get a sense of your writing. This is the application list. It's on our webpage. A commitment from a supervisor, a completed online application. That's just something that you would go on online and fill all the form in the online form. You would need your undergraduate and graduate transcripts sent, a photocopy of the degree parchments. I guess that's pretty standard. 2 to 3 page statement of interest. You want to be clear about that. That's something that's important for you to kind of have a sense of what you're planning to do, understanding that you may not have an exact idea of what you want to do, but some ideas about that. And perhaps you're in contact with your supervisor about this. Your CV, at least 2 letters of reference, and ideally they're academic. They may not necessarily be, but you definitely want to have one of those as an academic letter of reference. And then a substantive writing example. So that could be your thesis or project, but it could also be a publication, conference proceedings, a research paper. Our application dates, the first round is December 15th, and then the second round is February 1st if needed. And the key contacts right now would be Cheryl Simmons, probably me as well. And that's our website.